our speaker. Our speaker today is Jennifer Bailey, LMSW. She has been a clinical therapist for 26 years. She graduated from the University of Michigan with her Master of Social Work degree in 1993. Jennifer has extensive experience teaching people coping and recovery skills for serious mental illness. She takes the approach of identifying and building on people's strengths to increase their confidence in their abilities to make positive changes in behavior and lifestyles. Jennifer's a wife and a mother of 3 teens, God help her, a 14-year-old daughter and identical twin 13-year-old boys. She's going to talk to us today about give yourself the gift of self-compassion for motivation to make positive change. She's looking forward to sharing with us some of her best tips for finding more peace and joy in life. Please welcome with me, Jennifer Bailey.
Thank you very much. I'm so excited to be speaking with you guys today. I'm going to be sharing actually a presentation that has a few different tips. I thought about, it's actually been 27 years coming up this August since I graduated from the University of Michigan with my Master in Social Work. And I thought as I was designing the presentation, what would be some tips that were relatively quick and easy to get across, but could have some big life-changing impact if people implement those tips. So 3 things, including the self-compassion principle that I was originally going to speak on. 3 things made the cut, and I think they will give us the most bang for our buck today. So I forgot that I had given a little bio to introduce myself. So my next slide, and I hope everyone can you see my PowerPoint slides just fine? Just give me a nod. Yes. Also, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I will address them at the end of my presentation. So I'll just run through this real quick since it's a repeated thing. I did graduate from U of M with my Master in Social Work in 1993. I've worked in community mental health for 22 of those 27 years. I've done private practice for a couple years and faith-based counseling for 1 year. If anyone remembers, on Huron Avenue, just outside of the main drag of town, there was the Blue Water Christian Counseling Center. I worked there part-time as I was working at CMH and a little bit before I worked at CMH. I also took 3 years off to raise my family when they were very young, since it was kind of like having triplets. They were 16 months apart. And during that time, I did some relationship and premarital counseling at my church, Crossroads Community Church in East China. Currently, I am what's called an outpatient clinical case manager at St. Clair County Community Mental Health. So I do mainly therapy with my adult clients. Most of them, if not all, have a serious mental illness of recurrent depression, a severe anxiety disorder, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. I've had somebody who had agoraphobia where she couldn't leave her home, and we met in her bedroom for a while until she was ready to come and venture out and confront some of that anxiety. And now I'm happy to say that she does and goes wherever she wants. So it's a very rewarding job. I love my job. We help people get back to work. Often our folks, because of their mental illness being untreated, have been out of the workforce for a while. So we have a program called IPS that helps them update their resumes, do mock interviews, get ready for interviews, fill out applications. They'll stay in the background as much as the person wants or be in the forefront. And then when that person gets a job, they will stick with them and help them keep that job for up to a year. So it's really cool because it helps with retention. It's not just getting them a job and wishing them luck. And the philosophy is a job that they love, because having employment and a career is so good for one's mental health. I have a music degree in clarinet performance. Didn't know what to do with myself for a while, so I had a dual major. And I teach private clarinet lessons, mainly to the Marysville Public School Band program. And I've done that now for 32 years. I'm also the teacher for my twins. My twin boys both play the clarinet. So that's a lot of fun and can be a little trying. I've been married to my husband, Joe, who's an RN in the ER now at Lake Huron Medical Center. He works the afternoon shift until 1 a.m. We've been married for 16 years, and we do have our 3 teenagers, a 14-year-old daughter. My twin boys are identical twins with ADHD. And yes, that is challenging at times. In fact, I thought I'd share a little picture. This is a picture of us when we were doing a water balloon fight a few summers ago. And you see my boys on the far left. See that? That's kind of typical for them. So maybe 80% of the time, and then the rest of the time they're best friends, of course. This is my son, Colin. He is a clarinetist and a great student, very inquisitive, very compassionate kid. Here's my other boy, Darren. And as you can see, they're identical, but they don't look totally alike. He and Colin vie back and forth for first chair in their band, clarinet. And then last but not least is my daughter. She's going to turn 15 here at the end of July. She plays the oboe, and she's a pretty accomplished artist who does pet portraits. She's got her own little business doing pet portraits. So, mental health. What is most helpful to know about your mental health? I was thinking along those lines. What could I convey to people that they can take away from today and get some more peace in their and joy in their lives, especially during these trying times? First of all, we need to know that each of us have finite amounts of emotional energy within ourselves, kind of like money in the bank. We have limited funds, right? So we have to be careful what we spend our emotional energy on. And when we're stressed by multiple demands, which, hey, most of us are as women, most of the time, especially if we're raising families, involved in careers, and just maintaining friendships and relationships has been a lot harder during COVID, especially. We might have worries about people, worries about our finances, all those things. Chronic pain or chronic physical illness can be very draining to our emotional energy reserves. So it's kind of like we're making multiple withdrawals from a bank account each day just to be able to get through the day, do the tasks that are expected of us in our various roles, and solve problems. Because, hey, let's face it, most days don't go exactly as we planned. Things get in the way, things might blindside us, and we have problems to solve. So if our emotional bank account, our energy bank accounts are running on empty, meaning we're making a lot more withdrawals than we are deposits, we're going to be stressed, anxious, depressed, and might feel chronically overwhelmed by life. So today I thought we could do a short exercise that's designed to help each of us identify unique ways of making deposits into those emotional energy bank accounts. And it's different for everyone. I have a coworker who runs marathons. He finds that incredibly energizing, relaxing to train for it, and very rewarding. For me, running a marathon would add a ton of stress to my life. It would not be fun. It would be a difficult thing. So some of the things that are energizing for some of us end up being depleting for others. So we need to identify the individual ways that we make deposits into the bank account. So what I'd like you to do, if everyone could get out a piece of blank paper and have a pen. Thank you. Shannon, she's prepared. I see she has hers. I want you to label your paper with 2 sides. So put a line down the middle. On one side, I want you to write short-term investments. And on the other side, on the right, write long-term investments. The difference between the two, and I want to take not a lot of time, but a little bit of time. So let's say you're going to put at least 3 to 5 things on each side. Short-term investments are things that we do every day that give us, even if it's a short 1 or 2 minute break, they help us to take a time out and give us pleasure and energy to deposit into our bank accounts. And as you can see, I decided to do a mock-up one that's comprised of things that I use myself and some things that some of my clients use. So one of the things I'm doing now that I'm working at home is I make sure I get up 15 minutes earlier than my children and have coffee on the deck when it's a nice day. Going outside during my workday isn't much of an option when I'm working every day at CMH, but we have a beautiful deck and backyard here. So I found that I really want to get out there and just sit in nature for a few of my breaks and in the morning when possible. I have not done this next one personally, but several of my colleagues are taking a 10-minute walk at lunch. They go 5 minutes out and 5 minutes back from wherever they're at, or some of them have property that they know is about a 10-minute walk to walk their property. Another thing I did this year is I started back with having flowers outside. And I have a really pretty, if I was better at PowerPoint, I would show you. I've got a really pretty box that my husband made, and I have the moss roses in there, portulaca, because my deck is hot and dry. And I go out there and I deadhead and pick off the deadhead, you know, the old flowers, and make sure that I water it every week. And just tending to my flowers and doing that is a very calming and mindful activity. So that's on my list. I like to read, so getting a new novel and saying I'm going to read at least a few pages out of that each day would be energizing. Listening to music, we underestimate the power of having energizing or uplifting music on in the background even during our day. So I'm being specific. Listen to an uplifting playlist or radio station daily for an hour. I'm a person who is very energized by soaks in the tub. So notice how I'm being specific. I will soak in the tub twice this week for a half hour. And I even encourage people who keep a calendar to write these things into their calendar, just like you would any other appointment, because making deposits in your emotional bank account should be just as important as everything else that you've got to do that day. Sometimes if it doesn't make it into the calendar, you're not going to do it. I'm going to share at the end of my presentation some online resources for mental health and apps, and I've got clickable links. So I'm hoping that anyone who wants a copy of this PowerPoint will email me and I'll send it to you, because it's got several resources that you can just click from the PowerPoint and find them online. Also some suggestions for mental health enhancing apps on your phone. So that's why I put 5-minute online meditation. And ideally, I would have put that in, let's try that 3 times a week in the morning. And then finally, you've probably all seen this. Journal 3 things each day that made you smile or that you have gratitude for. Studies show that that really does change our outlook when we make it a practice. We make it something that we purpose to do each day. So those are examples of short-term investments. As we're talking, feel free to be writing some of your own, the ones that you already do, and some of the things that you would like to do that would be easy to do every day and not take a lot of time. On the left, I've put some longer term investments. And these are investments that take some planning, that may span several days or several hours. And we need to realize that all of us have a need for longer term investments as well. And they don't have to be vacations per se, although a vacation is an excellent example because you're going away from your familiar environment, you're unplugging, and you're just doing things that are fun and relaxing and energizing. So those definitely count, but you know, they would be the first thing a lot of people think about, but these other things do as well. And number one is, for me, something I've realized. I'm very energized when I just get together with a good girlfriend and have a meal, have coffee. I have a friend right now, a new friend from work, that we go for a walk now every 2 weeks. And we talk, of course, the whole time. We talk shop a little bit and we're getting to know each other more. And I realized that the get-togethers with my friends, to maintain my friendships as well, I need to plan those ahead every 6 weeks. And we ideally, at the end of our get-together and time together, we plan our next one. We put it in our calendars so that we don't get so busy that we forget. And before you know it, like you all know, it's 3 months and you haven't done it again. I'm going to share a website where you can take a webinar on self-compassion. So my example for number 3 is to do that webinar, and I put down that I'd like to do it next week. I have a young man who is in a retail job right now where he's not finding a lot of satisfaction. So one of his long-term investments is uploading his resume to Indeed and starting to search jobs in his field. And finally, this one is one of my favorites. A lot of us either have a hobby or we fall into we don't know what we like to do. And hobbies are what I call flow activities. Things that you do that almost take you back to childhood, where you actually get lost and you lose sense of time and you're doing something that's just very peaceful and calming. So what I suggest to a lot of people is also to look at what were some of their hobbies in childhood, because childhood for most of us was a pretty carefree time. So we link those childhood activities in our brains to fun and low stress and just being a flow activity we can get absorbed in. And I think that's why the adult coloring books, for example, have taken off so big, is because when we color, we often just kind of get lost in that activity. It doesn't require a lot of thought. So for number 5, I just bought a really cute latch hook rug kit. It's not a big one, just one that I could probably do in a few days. And I haven't done latch hook since I was 7 or 8. It was really popular back in the 70s. So getting a hobby kit and doing it would be an example of a long-term investment. And then some of those long-term investments, you'll need to look at your short-term investment category and plug those in. And remember, your goal is to have a lot of short-term investments to choose from. Let's say 10 to 20 even. And so each day you look at that list and you say, what are things I'm going to do to energize myself today and make those deposits in my bank account? And then maybe 1 or 2 long-term investments that are on the horizon or that you're actively planning and getting ready to do. Okay, my next slide is about self-compassion. And it's really and truly the best gift that each of us can give to ourselves. It's a newer concept. It was originated back in the early 2000s by a psychologist named Dr. Kristen Neff, and I've included a few quotes from her and a website that she has devoted entirely to the practice of self-compassion. So what is self-compassion? In essence, instead of mercilessly judging and criticizing oneself for inadequacies or shortcomings, self-compassion means you become kind and understanding anytime that you're confronted with a personal failing or a characteristic that you think is less than ideal. And she says, after all, whoever said you were supposed to be perfect? That's a quote by Dr. Neff. Self-compassion, a lot of times people think is letting themselves off the hook or slacking off. If you're not too hard on yourself when you make a mistake, then you're not going to improve, is a common fallacy. Actually, research shows that the more self-compassionate people are to themselves, they will have greater emotional resilience, ability to bounce back from discouragements or life events that are traumatic. Their self-esteem and self-concepts will be more accurate. They will be more caring in their personal relationships, as well as less narcissistic, and they would not have as much reactive anger. So you're able to stay calm, cool, and collected when triggers happen that would normally get you really irritated or angry. A lot of people pride themselves, and I've been one of these people, for being perfectionists and holding yourself to super high standards. But the thing that we need to realize is that perfectionism puts a lot of pressure on us. We always fall short. We never reach our goals. And in a lot of ways antithetical to the concept of self-compassion. So, how does one learn and practice self-compassion? First, we got to realize, again, we will all make mistakes, bump up against our personal limitations, fall short of our ideals. We're human. Being human isn't going to change. Even though I'm in my 50s and I'm still making some of the same mistakes I made probably in my 20s. I've fortunately made some great progress too along the way. But there's certain things about me that are never going to change. One of them is I have absolutely no sense of direction. You say north, south, east, or west to me, you might as well be speaking a foreign language. And I've discovered actually that if I'm absolutely certain that I should take a right, I just take a left and I'm okay. And that used to be something I was so mad about. I would beat myself up. I would yell, scream, cuss at myself. Because believe me, I've been lost in parking garages. It's bad. But now I've decided, hey, it's something I can share with people and laugh about like I am right now. It's something about me that, try as I might, it's not going to change. And so learning to stay calm when I get lost or when I'm uncertain, planning ahead, knowing that I've got, my Google Maps with me, looking at the route ahead of time, all that stuff has helped me deal with that shortcoming. And it's no longer a huge source of stress for me. Another thing we all need to think about is, who's the only person that you're guaranteed to be stuck with for life? You, right? Yep. You're looking at her if you could see her on your monitor. And why not learn to be your own best friend instead of your own worst enemy? Because I think a lot of us have probably had the experience, if we've had a really critical, negative, downer of a friend, we might have ended that friendship, right? But we tend to be those people to ourselves. But the good news is we can learn to be somebody loving and caring and nurturing to ourselves. It takes practice for sure. A lot of times our negative things, self-statements that we make, have been in our heads for years. Sometimes they were put there in childhood if we had parents who were abusive or not nurturing. So we play those tapes over and over. What we need to learn to do is when we make mistakes or we find ourselves being harsh and critical, you need to kind of listen for that and then stop and ask yourself, okay, what would I be saying to a friend, to somebody I love right now, if this very situation happened to them, or if they were struggling with the same inadequacy feelings that I'm struggling with right now? What would I say to them? How would I be treating them? Would I be disparaging them or would I be encouraging them? And of course, we're all probably going to say we're going to be encouraging our friends. We love our friends. We want them to believe in themselves and have peace in life. So why not learn to be those people for our own selves? For more information on self-compassion, this website, which is Dr. Kristen Neff's website, and you'll see the link at the bottom of the slide, has all kinds of ways to learn about and practice self-compassion. And at first I thought, well, it's pretty basic, isn't it? What more can I learn once I define it? But you'd be surprised. She's got meditations, some practice things to do that you can do each day to be self-compassionate, and some really good articles on that website. So I highly recommend it. Again, if anybody has any questions, in screen share mode, I haven't seen any comments come up. So I just want to make sure if you have any questions, you're thinking of them and would send them to me. I'd be glad to answer them. The last thing I decided to share today is about, this is a real burgeoning field of tools and information, and that's stuff about mental health that can help us practice good mental health practices every day. And it's right online and right on our phones. So for the first time in history, we don't have to have, I used to have my clients carry around a little notebook, right, with some of the things that they were supposed to be doing. Keep it in your car. Can you, fold this piece of paper and stuff it in your purse? Sometimes they'd forget it. But nowadays, hey, those beloved cell phones go with us everywhere. So I'm going to share some resources and some really good free apps, and a few that are monthly, they're charged monthly, so that your phone doesn't just become a source of stress, but also one of your greatest emotional health and wellness allies. So first, I'm going to share, these are apps that I've used myself and several of my clients have used and recommended. So I wanted to share a few of those, and a couple websites where you can also download an app for your phone. The first one, has anybody heard of, maybe by a show of hands, making self-affirming statements each day? Let's make some affirmations, right? Well, the very first app, and I have a link to it, is called I Am. And that link is an app that sends you several affirmations each day. So they flash as a notification on your phone screen. You'll get the little notification beep like you're receiving a message. You can customize them, or you can choose affirmations in certain areas, like self-confidence, self-esteem, things like that. There's a free version, and I'm using the free version right now. I get an affirmation once an hour. This morning, it said, I think my affirmation was along the lines of, I am calm and filled with joy, something like that, which was good since I was nervous about my presentation. But I found that to be helpful because often we say, yeah, I'm going to do affirmations. I know that's important, and we don't do it. So you could get one a day, you could get one an hour, and I think there's actually a half-hour option. But you customize the app to give you what you need. Another very popular app is called Calm, C-A-L-M. These are all available on either Android or Apple phones. And this is a general mental health app, meaning that it talks about depression, anxiety management, how you can deal with bipolar disorder and the mood swings inherent in that. Calm actually has sleep stories. These are for people who have a hard time shutting their brain down at night, which a lot of us do when we're laying there not doing anything and trying to fall asleep. These are stories that are very rich with calming imagery. So you get kind of sucked into this very relaxing, beautiful imagery. Or it can be a half hour. I think some of them are a little bit longer. And a lot of my clients find that to help them to prepare their brains to shut down and get ready for sleep and relaxation mode. Another very popular app is Headspace. As you can see, both of those, there are websites, and then you can download the app from your Google Play Store or your Apple Store. Another one is called Relax Melodies, and I use this one every night. It has, you know how you used to be able to buy those sound soothing machines that had like 10 different sounds on them? Now you can get this app for free, and it has probably 30 or 40 different sounds on it, and you can layer them. So if you like music with a little bit of nature sounds like a bubbling brook or waves in the background, you can do that and the other together. And I think you can layer up to 3 relaxing sounds, because it's known that the more you're getting stimuli that are calming, that are input into your brain, the more your brain will have to focus on instead of your worries. So that it can be really helpful. I tend to be a person who, if there's words in a sleep story, I just don't find that as relaxing. I need something that's kind of a white noise, intermittent, like waves crashing, that I can kind of lose myself in it and lose my mind in it and stop my mind from thinking at night. There's another app called Youper. It made me think of the Upper Peninsula, but it's actually called Y-O-U-P-E-R. that app, you can plug in a negative statement, a belief that you have that you just can't quite seem to get past. Like, if things are going my way, something always comes along and messes it up. You could put that statement into Youper, and Youper helps you argue against that statement. So it actually is a computer program that gives you positive input to help you change that belief. And one of my clients found that, and she uses it very regularly. Another app is actually an online journal called JOUR, and it's a journal for being mindful. Mindfulness practice is another big thing that you've probably heard about in today's literature or in magazine articles. And both Calm and Headspace have some really good mindfulness practices and mindfulness tips. I believe also selfcompassion.org has some good mindfulness and mindful self-compassion put together. The final app or the final site I put on here is a veterans site, Veterans Administration site, but they've made all these apps, the bulleted apps I have on the second half of the slide, they're all free to anyone. You don't have to be a veteran. And they have some very specific apps on topics of interest that a lot of us struggle with. Of course, there's some for PTSD on there because a lot of veterans have experienced PTSD, but there's also Insomnia Coach. There's a COVID Coach app for people who are struggling with a lot of anxiety about the pandemic, about getting the virus, being socially isolated. There's Couples Coach, which is a relationship coach app, anger and irritability management skills, and finally an app for mindfulness called Mindfulness Coach. And those are all available for free at www.mobile.va.gov, which I think how wonderful of them to make that free to all of us. So we've really availed our clients of that, and I've downloaded a few myself, especially that Insomnia Coach if people are wanting to not be dependent on sleeping pills. This cognitive behavioral therapeutic approach to insomnia is shown to be just as effective in the long run. My last slide are a couple resources, a couple websites where you can find really good articles, very well written, very detailed with coping skills and steps on pretty much any emotional health topic you could think of. There are 3 of those. www.psychologytools.com is wonderful. You just type into your search engine whatever topic you want an article on and it'll bring several up. Psychology Today, that's a magazine. Oh, and I misspelled psychology, I just saw that. PSY, Psychology Today, I'll fix that, is another, all their articles online are free. And it's a wonderful repository of mental health tips, techniques, and information, like especially if you have gotten diagnosed with a mental health disorder or somebody you love has, if somebody you love is struggling with addiction, there are some really good resources on both those sites. And then the final one again is an article actually that I found today that thoroughly explains all the different facets of self-compassion. I forget whose blog that's from, but I just really love that article. So I thought, you know what, I'll pop it in my last slide and people can check it out if they want to. So that concludes my presentation for today. This last slide has my contact information on it. If anyone's interested in getting a hold of me, I'm a pretty good resource for knowledge about counseling agencies in the area. I have several colleagues who are in private practice, and I can point you in the right direction. I'd be glad to help anybody out if they're struggling with something specific and just need a little bit of consultation. Also, I'm considering myself, kind of as a side thing, starting a mentoring business, and that would be different from counseling in that it would be single session consultations where people could just bring a problem that they seem to be hitting a wall with to me. Kind of like your own personal Dear Abby, but with an experienced face-to-face counselor or even online counselor. So you wouldn't be going to your insurance company and checking out benefits and seeing, you know, where could I go for counseling? You might just need a session, maybe two, to get a game plan together, either for a problem that has been difficult for you or for a big change that you want to make in your life, and you seem to be hitting roadblocks in making that change. I'd come up with a detailed change plan and resources for you. So I thought today I would ask people if you would just say in the comments, do you think that's something that you would be interested in taking advantage of if I was to offer that service? Kind of putting my feelers out there, engaging whether people would be interested in something like that. And I think it might be a little niche market because not everyone has the time or needs to commit to ongoing psychotherapy. So thank you guys so much for letting me present to you today. And I thank you very much, Shannon. I just saw a chat pop up, so I'm going to stop my screen share and look at comments. But feel free also to unmute yourself and ask a question. Thank you guys. Okay. Let me go back here. It says I have 8 comments, but I only see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How do can anyone unmute themselves? Oh, hi. Let me try this again. Okay, chat, there we go. I've got it. Cool, very cool. All right. Anyone have any questions they want to verbalize? Well, again, thank you for allowing me to be your presenter today, and I hope you took something away from this that you can use. At the very least, you've got a list of ways to make the deposits in your bank account that you can add to. Because again, the more stresses we have going on, the more we need to be making those deposits each day so that we can cope adequately and not break down, you know, and have an anxiety disorder or depression or some of the other emotional illnesses tend to come up in our lives when we're running on empty for too long. So thank you again.